This is not a review or even a proper critical evaluation of Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Instead, I'll peel back the storytelling mechanics to show you why this film still haunts us so many years later. While no one would declare that Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning was a financial failure, the $21.9 million gross was a steep step down from the final chapter's $32.9 million. Without the benefit of a strong gimmick such as 3D or promise of killing off the main character, the series was floundering. While still immensely profitable, it was clear that the previous film alienated the fan base. Another misstep may well have meant the end of the franchise. What's an entertainment empire to do, then?
Paging Mr. Voorhees. Please return to cinemas. Your party is waiting.
The decision to bring back Jason Voorhees was ultimately a business decision and not a creative one. Built on the equation is a reversal of the mindset that produced A New Beginning. Light bulbs must have been flickering on at 555 Melrose Ave, Paramount Studios, Hollywood. It wasn't just the blood and breasts after all. What had always separated the Friday the 13th series from the other films in the endless parade of slasher films was its central character. Jason Voorhees was the star. The title of the sixth film in the series was a direct communication to the fans that this new Friday was intended as a return to form. No pretenders to the throne this time. Horror's premier madman was returning from the grave to dish out his unique form of punishment on a fresh batch of college-aged teens. Jason Lives isn't a title. It's a promise. Whether the Paramount executives liked it or not, Jason had become as iconic a character as Godzilla, Abbott and Costello, or James Bond, which would be made explicit in the winking and nodding opening credit sequence. Unlike the previous 5 films, the core creative center of Part 6 burdened the film with the task of transitioning the series from relatively realistic to outright fantasy. Jason's resurrection and the opening moments of the final chapter were handled in an ambiguous, non-supernatural manner. We don't see the process, there's no magic at play. Perhaps he wasn't altogether dead at all, but in some unstated but natural form of chrysalis. The serial killer sinking into death to emerge as something more. Jason Lives had no such luxury. By the end of the 4th film, the villain had his head nearly cleaved in two, and his body hacked up. It would take much more to bring him back. And that brings us to a side note. Jason Lives never makes mention of the events of A New Beginning. In fact, the film directly contradicts the earlier film's assertion that Jason was cremated after the events of the final chapter. This represents the first, but by far not the last, or even the most sweeping, case of revision in the series. With the acknowledgement that Jason Voorhees had become the most identifiable screen boogeyman since the heyday of Universal Pictures, the film begins with a direct homage to 1943's Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. It's hard to mistake the borrowed imagery as an adult Tommy Jarvis and his loyal friend Alan work their way through a desolate, wind-blown cemetery towards Jason's final resting place. This newest spirit towards the character would carry on from there. Each new Friday would feature Jason's name in the title until the 2009 remake. This newfound respect, if grudging, is best exemplified by the gravesite. New Beginning treated Jason as disposable and easily replaced. His grave in the opening dream sequence is a cheap, unconvincing set, no more elaborate than a hastily assembled front yard decoration in front of any suburban home on Halloween. Here, Jason's tombstone is a work of beautiful Gothic artwork, a monument to the long shadow the character had already cast over mainstream movie culture. Later, the Scream series would heavily leverage self-awareness as his trademark, but Jason Lives was the true pioneer, albeit one that never allows the winks and nods to interact directly with the plot. Characters break the fourth wall with frequency, whether it's Martin the Caretaker directly speaking to the camera to playfully chastise the audience. Some folks sure have a strange idea of entertainment. Or the two 12-year-old boys who serve as a Greek chorus. I think we're dead meat. But the communication is always one-sided, unlike in Scream where the audience seems to be encouraged to derisively participate in the outlining of the rules. Here, the absence of a fourth wall is not meant as a criticism of the slasher film, but rather a good-natured acknowledgement that the filmmakers and the audience are on the same page. The same celebration of movie grandeur quickly elevates Jason Lives from straight exploitation flick into the realm of a more traditional summer movie, complete with dirty, Harry-esque quips, wherever the red dot goes, you bang, car chases, and elaborate stunts. The spectacle of the RV flipping on its side is on a scale no other Friday ever even attempted. To some purists, this might seem like a move in the wrong direction, but in a film that wholeheartedly embraces bigger-than-life fantasy ideas, such as Jason's resurrection by a lightning bolt, it makes more sense than to keep things low-key. To play this material completely straight, especially coming after the mentally challenged New Beginning, would likely have pushed the film into unintentional camp. By playing along, the filmmakers are invulnerable to criticisms that they push too far, even as they do exactly that. With less skill, this film would be a horrendous failure, but at every turn the creative team makes surprising, smart, spry decisions that keep the fragile premise alive. In another film in the series, the paintball scene would have been unnecessary and distracting. By injecting both pratfall humor and genuine outrageous pathos into the sequence, the viewer is too entertained to notice that the death of the characters does nothing to advance the plot, except perhaps to showcase the ludicrous strength of the reborn Big J. Having the red shirts of the movie wear headbands that declare them dead is both a great visual gag and a sublime wink to the audience. It shouldn't, and in less capable hands wouldn't, but it all works. At the movie's climax, Tommy attempts to chain Jason to the bottom of Crystal Lake, thereby returning him to the original resting place in the franchise to its origins. It's clear that the plan here is to level set the series back to before the events of the final chapter, thus allowing for further adventures. Of course, the film makes no pretense that Tommy's ideas could ever really dispatch the hometown favorite psychopath. There's no way to ignore the message here as we repeat the ending of the fourth film, but now with the roles reversed. As we gaze into Jason's eyes, they widen, exactly as Tommy's did at the end of the final chapter. Is there any doubt as to who the main characters become? From here on out, the heroes and heroines will come and go, but the star will remain. Frequently in long-running franchises, there's a film that stands apart from the rest, not because of any failings, but because it beats insurmountable odds to become one of the best in the series. On Her Majesty's Secret Service had to contend with an unfamiliar leading man in a role many associated exclusively with Sean Connery. A black sheep to be sure, but today considered to be one of the crown jewels of the 007 library. Godzilla vs. Mothra, the fourth go-round for the big guy in the green suit, had a bizarre hand to play. Antagonist dinosaur against giant mythical moth. That shouldn't work. But by any rational measure, it's one of the best. The odd man out in a series that too often has lost sight of its core premise and trespassed into territory it should never have considered. Somewhere amongst all the telekinetic blondes, seafaring day trips to New York, body swapping, and impromptu astronaut training, Jason Lives stands very, very tall. As tall as a burning RV, in fact.